Hello, welcome to the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show today. As you've probably guessed, it's not at the usual time that we normally have the show, which is 8 o'clock in the evening UK time. But that's because we have a guest from Australia on the show today. So hence the reason why Happy Healthcare Professionals live show is happening at 10 a.m. So if you are joining me live now, then do say hi in the comments, wherever you're joining me from. If you are joining me, do say hi in the comments. And if you do end up watching this later on, then just drop a little replay and say that you watched it. I'd love to know what your biggest takeaways are from today's live show. So let me introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is Komal. I am a former national level pharmacist turned pharmacy career change coach. And I love helping pharmacy professionals to create their own career paths on their own terms so that they can develop a life full of fulfillment, freedom, and flexibility, and do work that they absolutely love and become that happy healthcare professional again. So that's exactly what I did, and I absolutely love helping others to do the same. And I love doing this show because I get to interview some of the most amazing colleagues in the pharmacy space and learn from them, and they get to share their stories with you, and you get to learn from their experiences. And that's what I absolutely love about doing this show. So if you have been joining me, then you will know that I've been speaking to a number of entrepreneurial women pharmacists, which I think there are not enough of personally. And I think we need more of us in this space because we really have so much creativity and innovation to bring to the healthcare space. And today's guest is no exception. Helen is an incredible pharmacist from Australia. She has many years experience as a pharmacist over there, and she developed her own skincare brand. And I'm really excited to bring her on and be able to share her story with us. So without further ado, let me bring Helen onto screen. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Kamal. How are you going?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm so pleased that we could have this conversation because we've obviously been batting back and forth for a while to try and have this conversation, right?
It has. It's been, I don't know, like almost 6 months.
It really has, hasn't it?
Yeah, time's flown. Like it's gone so fast, and you've got a really busy schedule as well. So trying to make everything, and so like so do I, and like, but trying to make everything like, I guess, tied up, and also the time zone as well. Like, yeah. So thank you so much, Ashley, for moving it to this time because otherwise it would have been like 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning.
I know.
It's like really early for me. Yeah, like especially people who do know me really well. 5 o'clock in the morning is a big stretch.
So, Helen, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I guess, yeah, so my name is Helen, as you sort of mentioned earlier. Just been in pharmacy for a really long time, so over 14 years now. And I've always enjoyed community pharmacy, and I've done a little bit of hospital work, but I didn't last very long. I just didn't really, I'm not sure what it was. I just really enjoy, being out there interacting with people, and I also enjoy the fast-paced environment as well. Whereas, like, in hospital, it gets quite busy as well, especially when you have a lot of patients to take care of. But I think that like their work is very different. So it's just been pretty much community pharmacy predominantly from entire career, like pharmacy career. And yeah, I just like going out there, listening to people, talking to people. Yeah, I mean, like some days it gets really exhausting. Don't get me wrong.
We've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there, and you know what it's like. So yeah, so sometimes it's really like sometimes it's really great days. Sometimes like you have bad days. It's just like anything really. So yeah.
So tell me about your brands then, because you started your skincare brand Ellé Derm. Talk a little bit about how that's come about.
So Yeah, so thank you for the questions as well. I had I had a really busy day. I literally just like had a quick chance to have a look at it earlier. So had a quick brief, like, so just your first question, like, like pivotal experiences, like why I chose this career path. And I guess it's because I was sort of thinking back, and it's a really great question actually, because I think I kind of grew up in a household of like, just I guess female entrepreneurs, because when I was younger, I lived with my grandma for a lot of the time, and she's like, she's very active. She's always like, she's definitely a serial entrepreneur. She's very like, she's definitely like, she's very good at what she does. And like, she's over 70 now, and she's still going. So
amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing. Like, I have to take my hat off for her. So I guess, like growing up in a household where, there's no such job as a male's job or a female's job. I guess you just get the job done if it needs to be done. So I guess that was kind of attitude I grew up with. So I guess that's probably, like you see a lot of people say, oh, like how, like it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, I guess, but if you sort of grew up around that environment, I guess it doesn't make any difference really. Like, I guess you when you don't know any better, I suppose, if you want to put it that way, you kind of think that's normal. So yeah. And I guess your other question was, so like how I came about with Ellé Derm. Well, I guess being in community pharmacy for such a long time, and and just talking to people, serving customers all day, I kind of, and also I also had a passion for like compounding or creating products. But in retail, we don't actually compound or make things anymore. And all the form, like, everything is off the shelf. You label it, counsel a customer, off they go. And if there's any sort of add-ons that you can, provide them to give that, I guess that overall like holistic solution, like, let's say like an aqueous cream, like, just a bland moisturizer, then you would recommend that. Or so anything that so you don't really compound anything anymore. So I guess, just being in retail for such a long time and talking to customers, I kind of felt like there was a need for skincare that was effective, multifunctional, because at the time, like, we had like reps coming in and telling us that we had to like, sell all these products, and there's like a 6-step skincare, there's a 7-step skincare, and then there's like 11-step skincare. I'm like, what? I'm out of like steps after 3 steps. I'm like, what? I'm like, what is this 11-step you're talking about? And I'm like, really? I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like some people actually love, like, and it's like it's like a time to de-stress for them, and I guess everyone de-stresses differently. I don't really de-stress over an 11-step skincare routine. Like, for me, that's stressful. Like, so, I mean, I de-stress in other ways. Like, I go for a run, or I, do something else. But for some people, like, they love that, and that's perfectly fine. But I just felt like I don't really need to sell 11 products, or like, I don't really need to sell more than 5 products, really, like max. Like, if any more, like, I feel like any more than that, like, especially when it comes to a treatment. I mean, 5 products for me would include like a treatment and a prevention. So it's like, so I really felt like there was a need for someone to go out there and say, hey, look, guys, you don't really need that many products. And also, there was a space there, like, I think for pregnancy as well, because a lot of women were like pregnant and they kind of didn't really know what was safe for them, what was effective, but yet they still wanted something, to keep them going during that 9 months. So I guess, that's where I sort of thought, well, combining what I know, what I like, what I do every day anyway, like, why not do this? So that's where we are now.
Amazing. I mean, it sounds like you kind of really identified like a gap in the market, and you kind of combined your skill set together, right, to create this.
I did. Yeah. Because, like, honestly, like, I was serving so many people every day. I was serving a lot of customers, and where I work, it's really busy. Like, we see a lot of customers, and then sometimes I feel like I'm so like out of talking, like, but it's great. Like if you can help someone and they appreciate it, and if it works, they tell you it works. If it doesn't work, you still want to know. But if it doesn't work, because then you can actually like find ways to improve, like what you've recommended for the next person, or perhaps you can actually help them better the next time round if they came back and said, oh, whatever didn't work. But thankfully, a lot of times it does work. So but it's just. But yeah, like you said, it is really combining all my skill sets, everything I've known, everything I've learned, and just, I guess, just providing that solution for people because, I myself, I don't like, if I sort of see something that I feel like isn't right, I will tell you it's not right. Like, I don't know, I'm just that kind of person, so I can't help it.
Yeah, and that's what people appreciate, right? That's what customers appreciate. They appreciate your honesty. And your real kind of expertise, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. So, tell me about how long has the brand been going for, and tell me a little bit more about the brand itself.
Yeah, so it's sort of like. So one day, my friends and I, my friend and I, were sitting around, we were having a drink, and we were like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I'm like, I don't know. Like, we were sort of just having a general conversation, and we were talking about starting businesses, and I was like, what do I really want to do for the rest of my life? What I'm really passionate about. Like we have a lot of things in common. Like, we can talk, we can sit there and talk for hours and hours and hours. And, so we sort of like, so then like, but he was like really like, into like, he obviously had other passions, and I, like he obviously had different skill sets. I had different skill sets, and I was like, oh, okay. And then so you're sort of like, well, have you ever thought of like, starting your own brand? And I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, and at the time I kind of like didn't really think much of it. And to be honest with you, I never have thought that, I don't know, like for me, like, at the time, like I wasn't really surrounded by anyone doing this, and I kind of really didn't really know where to start. I kind of like had to really fumble my way around, trying to find like the right people to go to and that kind of thing. And and just like brand, like, there was so much to learn, like everything from scratch. And so anyway, so everything from scratch pretty much. But I've been pretty lucky along the way where I've found a lot of good, like, connections. I made a lot of really good connections. And, they say in business you shouldn't trust anybody, but I think that at the right time, the right place, I think you can. I think there's going to be really good people around to give you that support, to give you, the right advice. So it took me a while actually, because it was my first time coming up with formulation. Because, like in the past, like, well, we don't, I'm not sure what you've had, like what you have there in the UK, but here in Australia, we have like a formulary, like we have the Australian formulary, and then
we have one too.
So, like these are like really old school formulations, but they're great. Like, they work. But when it comes to cosmeceuticals, like when it comes to skincare, the formulations look completely different. Like when you actually look at the formulation, it's like completely different. So I kind of like needed to learn everything like from scratch, and it was a lot of work. But I really, and I guess because like I do enjoy it, I didn't really find it was a lot of work in a way, or maybe time just went by so fast that you didn't really realize how much time you've actually put into it until you look back at the timeline. You're like, holy shit, like I've spent this much time on it already, or like I've spent this much money on it already. And it's just, so I guess, so when they say find something you love doing, I think that's what it means. So pretty much, to answer your question, like so I started, it was a long time to come up with a name even. It was just like, it was just such a long time to come up with a name. And so then eventually, like, we came up with Ellé Derm. And so Ellé means bright and derm is skin. And for me at the time, I thought that was a good fit for the brand because, we want to, because our tagline is for scientifically brighter skin. So it was just, the name and the tagline kind of like fitted in really well together. So, so that's how we came up with it. And yeah, so our first formulation, I think took like 18 months.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was just like, I was just like so particular with it. I was just like, and because I had to like start from scratch, I had to find suppliers, I had to like research a lot. I pretty much learned everything from scratch. But then, after the first, like after your first one, you keep your connections, you don't burn bridges, obviously, try and move faster for the second one. But there's going to be hiccups along the way, which, that's kind of expected. And yeah, so you just find solutions for it, really.
Amazing. So how long have you had the brand? Is it, when did you kind of launch, I suppose?
So officially we launched end of 2019. Yeah.
And where do you kind of sell your products through? Do you sell them like direct to customer, or do you sell them like through pharmacies?
Oh, and back to the launch too. So coming back to the whole business side, like brand launch, like obviously I had no idea whatsoever. So my launch, like, it was kind of like really nothing. Like, it was kind of a little bit like fluffy, like, But I think like for the next one, like for the next launch, I think I really want to do it like a lot better. And I've got a few ideas for it, which should be quite exciting. I just want to make sure that I do it right this time. And but yeah. And so your question was, what was the question?
When did you launch?
So towards the end of 2019, and then where we actually predominantly sell our products. So we ship pretty much anywhere, obviously around Australia, US, Canada. So we like there's only a few selected countries that I probably wouldn't ship to, only because it takes so long to get there. And but we pretty much can ship anywhere, really. Yeah, so it's like e-commerce is really good now. Like it's it's just a matter of like, time and like how long you really want your customers to wait for their products. Because so distribution is a whole nother issue in its own. There's just a lot to think about, and we'll get there eventually. But at the moment it's just like it's mostly the major countries at the moment.
Amazing. And what would you say has been your biggest learnings through the process so far?
Biggest learning? So much. I have no idea. So much. Made a lot of errors, made a lot of just in like around and it's just from packaging to like there's been a lot of learning curves, but at the end of the day, I find that if you don't make mistakes, it means you never tried, right? Just don't make too many of them. So
it's so true. I mean, I know that experience myself from having developed the turmeric supplement and made many mistakes along the way. And there's a lot of work and effort that goes into creating a brand, like a lot of kind of background work that I suppose as a pharmacist, unless you've been working in industry, I suppose you don't really have that kind of access or visibility of what goes into creating a brand, right?
That's
but
right.
Also, that whole kind of aspect of learning a business, that's not even something that that most of us are familiar with. Most of us don't really get business training, right? So it's that whole steep learning curve as well. But I have to say that I get really excited by that, and I actually learn a lot through it. And I think that, you're absolutely right. We need to make the mistakes. So how do you think, as a pharmacist, I talk to a lot of pharmacists, and we don't really like making mistakes because it's not It's not part of our DNA, right?
No, that's right. You feel terrible. You're like, it's like it ruins your whole week. It's depending on how bad the mistake is, it can ruin your whole month. So yeah.
So how do you cope, Helen, with like perceived mistakes, if that makes sense? Because I don't ever see anything really as a mistake. It's a learning, right? You know, you either grow or you learn. But yeah, how do you kind of get over that hump?
I think for me, I try and look at everything from a positive point of view. Like I try and look at everything. Like I don't try and see it as a negative. I try and bring the positive out of a negative. And I think and I apply that across the board to everything that happens. And my mom's always like, "You're just looking for an excuse." I'm like, "No, Mom, no, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse." You know, I'm telling you, there's got to be like a positive out of this. So I always have that mindset that there's that something's happened for a reason. It's gone this way to, you know, teach you something, to make you rethink about a decision you just made. So I always see everything as a positive. Because
I mean, that's such an important trait as an entrepreneur, because you're going to make mistakes. Like, it's going to happen. Yeah. There's going to be failures. There's going to be, expensive mistakes. There's going to be not so expensive mistakes. But you know, you have to pick yourself up, and I suppose that's a trait that as an entrepreneur, you know, you can't really be one without.
No, and I think if you are in that, you know, if you're like, how do I put it? Like, if you sort of like, if I was down about every little mistake that occurred or every little thing that didn't go my way, I would feel like I wouldn't want to get out of bed. Like I would feel like I should have stayed in bed and just slept. But you know, the world doesn't work that way. And I think it's like you said, it's really important. And I'm not sure what it is, but you just got to try and see it from a positive side, because otherwise you just don't get anything done, and I feel like you just be really unpleasant to be around.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. You know, I think a lot of pharmacists, they kind of feel like they're stuck, right? You know, stuck in the sense that, you know, someone listening to this might be thinking, well, I've got an idea and I really want to pursue it, but you know, I don't know if I've got the right skills. I don't know if I've got the the right network around me to be able to do it. You know, what would you say to someone like that? Because, you know, you kind of pivoted completely from being a community pharmacist to, like, you know, creating your own brand, and that's no easy feat. But what would you say to someone that wants to do that for themselves?
So I think if someone is really passionate about pursuing a career, like if it's a pivot, whether it's a pivot or whether it's you know, something completely different, like in a completely different field, let's say, for example, I don't know, building, like, you know, if they wanted to go into the building industry, for example, I think like the best place to start is to hang around people who actually are doing that kind of, in that kind of field, in that industry, in that line of work. I mean, you may not start out, you know, doing all those cool things that you've always wanted to do, like right from the get-go. Like you might be lucky and someone might take you under your wing, like, you know, take you under their wings and mentor you, and, you know, and obviously give you all this, you know, 100% support. Because I have seen that, you know, and you might be one of those lucky people. And until you actually put your stuff out there, how do you know you're not one of those lucky people? If you never try, you don't know, right? So you just got to put yourself out there. So it doesn't matter what industry you want to get yourself into. I think the first step is to actually start hanging around people who actually are in that kind of industry, in the industry you want to get into. So whether it's, you know, like I was saying, if you want to be a developer, if you want to be in the building industry, if you want to be like, you know, if you want to get into, I don't know, what's another one? Textiles, making fabric. Go and hang out with people who actually make fabric all day, every day. And I think it would just actually like, it's just, it would just be a natural progression, I think, for, you know, once you start, once you start surrounding yourself in that kind of environment, you start to get another lead and another lead, and it starts to lead you to where you eventually want to be.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. And I think it's just, that's something we don't do enough of. I mean, I speak to pharmacists all the time who are like, I want to go and work. And I spoke to one yesterday, in fact, and she said, I want to change from this part of industry to another part of industry. You know, she was doing quality assurance and she wanted to go into regulatory affairs. And I was like, have you actually spoken to anybody in regulatory affairs? And the answer was no. And I was like, well, go speak to somebody in regulatory affairs, because that, you know, you need to understand what it is that they do. And I think sometimes when we get into our profession, we kind of sit in that space of, well, I'm this now, so I can't really change. You know, and it's kind of, we put that label on ourselves, but actually going out there and speaking to people, you know, it's like kind of like putting yourself in the shoes of like being back at school again when you were trying to figure out what career to go down, right? And you were doing all these, like, you know, voluntary places, or you know, you know, and that's what you kind of have to do. And you've got to put yourself in that space and start talking to people in the space and understanding what it is that they do.
And understand what it is they do from the time they wake up in the morning to the time they actually go to home and go to bed. I think you've got to understand those aspects and understand, okay, is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? You know, is this something that I can put aside? Is this something that I can put family aside for? You know, or obviously not put family aside for, but you know, like delay like getting married or having children. You know, is that what I really want to do? And put this first, because like a lot of the times you got to understand that, you know, there's certain sacrifices, and I think like until you actually speak to someone who actually is in the profession or the field that you think you may want to get into, it's good to know from them, you know, the good and the bad, what their day is actually like, what their personal life is like. I think it's good to know all those aspects before you sort of like jump ship, because the grass is never greener on the other side. I'm sorry, but like I know, you know, like, but you got to know, like you got to know what you're getting yourself into, and so I think,
you're so right. It's so easy. I mean, from my own experience, I kind of, you know, when I created the turmeric supplement, I didn't realize just how quickly I could get burnt out. You know, because like you know, I was working a day job, I've got young kids, I've got a you know, brand, you know, and it's like you live in this kind of like bubble a little bit, and you're thinking, oh well, this is good, you know, and it's not until you actually start doing the thing that you realize just how much time, effort, energy is involved in doing it, and what your life actually looks like, and that's such an important question to ask that you've just said, Helen, you know, about really understand what the person does from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed at night. You know, where are they spending their time? Because
I mean, like, it's just, you know, I mean, I look back and I'm really glad that I've actually talked to a lot of different people, you know, because it gives me a really good understanding of, like, you know, which path I actually really want to go down. So you just got to get out there and start talking to people.
Definitely. I agree. I agree. So I can't thank you enough for your time, Helen, today, because I know it's like, you know, late there now in Australia, but, you know, I thank you so much for sharing your experience. And where can we find you? Like, where's the best place to get in touch with you? And
so you can you can reach me via our website at elléderm.com.au. It will just get redirected to the global like domain, but that's fine. And the other one is LinkedIn, so you can always find me on LinkedIn. So yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Helen. Really appreciate your time today. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you for having me on and sharing my story. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. So thank you so much to Helen for coming on the show. I really appreciate her insights and her knowledge and her honesty about her experiences of like setting up her own brand. And if you are, if you're interested in developing your own product, or you really want to create something of your own, then do reach out to someone who's doing that already and have a conversation with them, just like she said, because you never know what you're going to learn from that experience, and you never know what direction that's going to lead you in. So if that is something that you are interested in and you would like some support, then do reach out to me. I'm always happy to help, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and I shall see you next week. Bye.